Okay, we're beginning.
Oh.
This is the first of our series that I wanted to do. Let me close this. This is the
People blowing up your phone. Popular man.
This is the first of our series that I wanted to do. On American presidents. I love history and I want to spread the passion. And who else to get this with than my flatmate, my roommate from college.
You lead with flatmate. You don't lead with like best friend. You lead with flatmate.
I should have said that. I should have said that.
No,
sorry.
Now I'm glad I heard that.
No. I thought flatmate was closer.
That's no, closer.
Flatmate means you're living together.
I'm not even angry.
I feel I might not hear the end of this. Okay, thanks again, Nathan, for joining me in this episode.
Thank you for having me, Abby. I am honestly, I'm very excited. This is gonna be cool.
I'm very excited as well. So the first episode I wanted to talk about was a president who I really think is underrated, who we don't really talk enough about. And it's a president that I think we can learn a lot from in the present context. Ooh. And his name is Ulysses S Grant.
Ulysses S Grant.
Ooh, yes.
So, you know this, but I'm not the best with my US presidents.
Doesn't matter.
Or US history.
Yeah.
So, I had no idea who Ulysses S Grant is. But, I as you asked, I did some. I was looking into him. Started with a Wikipedia page. Now I listened to some podcasts. This is an interesting guy.
Pretty interesting guy,
This is a cool guy. I've never been excited about presidents before. This is kind of cool.
Okay, this will be fun then. I have a confession to make as well.
Okay, here we go.
I didn't know much about Ulysses S Grant as well.
Really?
Yeah, so,
Well, I knew the name. So I'd heard the name for some reason.
It's a good name.
But, like...
It's a powerful name.
But that was it.
Yeah. No, only reason I know... I started reading about this guy is, the soundtrack for Hamilton?
Yeah. Funny you bring that up, yeah.
I love Hamilton.
Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Vicky, your girlfriend, also loves Hamilton.
But my girlfriend... You introduced it to my girlfriend, and so she felt the need to introduce it to me. I've heard the entire soundtrack, back to front, upside down, every which way. I've never seen a second of the play.
Oh, neither have I.
So I feel like I've kind of ruined it. But goddamn, it's a good soundtrack.
The music is good.
And that's another example, because like Hamilton is some... I certainly never heard of who Alexander Hamilton is. Alexander Hamilton. But
most people in the world hadn't. Most people in America hadn't.
Such an interesting life.
Such an interesting
All these
life.
things that we don't know about. It's awesome.
So, by the way, regarding the soundtrack for Hamilton, I know we're getting a bit distracted.
You can sing it.
No, I don't want to humiliate myself now. I need a bit more alcohol in my body for that.
Yeah.
I was in a train ride actually from Mumbai during my deportation period. That is.
During my deportation period.
From
Abby, my dearest flatmate, has been deported, and now everyone knows that.
For a short period of time, I left voluntarily.
Actually deported.
I left voluntarily.
You got a letter from the Queen.
I didn't get any letter from the Queen. It's a joke when I said deported. I wasn't deported. I left voluntarily. For those listening.
Yeah, you're right. They won't know that it's true.
No,
carry on.
Nathan, please. No. So I was in a train from Calcutta to Mumbai, and I didn't know that's the first time I went on a long distance train journey.
Yeah.
I didn't know they didn't have Wi-Fi.
Wait. Okay. When was this? Recently?
2016.
Was the first time you went on a...
No, long train journey. I've been on 12-hour journeys before, but I thought since those were sleepers,
long to you?
36 hours.
Oh my god!
Yeah.
You can leave Europe in that time. That's mental.
Yeah.
God, I need to go to India. I have no idea how big it is.
You have to go to India.
I just don't understand
Yeah.
how big it is.
So 36-hour journey, only a bed. Yeah. Each person gets like a carriage, like a bed, and they say it's AC. It's a lie. The AC switches off midway through the journey.
What it feels like, yeah.
The charging sockets don't work properly. Yeah. Thank goodness it was still like I had multiple batteries charged up, like in the power bank, so it's more or less lasted. And the only thing I had loaded in my phone was the soundtrack for Hamilton. I didn't have a book. I thought I was going to have internet. I was going to play with my phone. No internet, but I had the soundtrack for Hamilton.
36 hours.
36 hours.
And how long is the soundtrack for Hamilton? A couple hours?
2 hours. 2 hours long.
36
yeah.
hours.
Yeah. And it's unbearable.
18 times.
But anyways, the reason I mentioned it is the guy who wrote the soundtrack for Hamilton, Lin-Manuel Miranda, he got the idea about it by reading this autobiography of Alexander Hamilton.
Yes.
By Ron Chernow.
Yes.
And that's what his new project is on Ulysses S Grant.
So that is exactly I was listening to him talk about Ulysses S Grant so exactly that. I was listening to a podcast. I was doing my quote unquote research, and it was the same guy who did Hamilton. So I kind of knew. I was like, okay, this guy's had an interesting. Ulysses S Grant has had an interesting life. Clearly, if there's a huge novel written about it.
Actually, I think they're going to make a movie about it because it's such a great story as well.
Yeah.
You know, I know we'll talk more about this in detail, but someone like Ulysses, let's just call him Grant from now.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, it's such a long...
UG?
UG.
Yeah.
Yeah. So our good man UG here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man like UG?
Yeah.
Sorry, carry on.
So Grant is not like a figure that you would expect history to remember. Like he was like bottom of his university class.
Yeah.
It's not like someone like Alexander Hamilton who was this remarkably intellectual guy with a lot of ambition and drive. No, he was just a middling guy who...
I thought it was cool too, because like sometimes you look back on history, it's sort of like, oh, well, this guy was destined to be.
Yeah.
But this, well, should we talk about that? So
let's start.
So okay, I'm going to hit you with some knowledge. Right?
Sure.
So he went to West Point.
He did go to West Point.
His dad made him go.
His dad did make him go because his dad didn't think he had any other talent. Well, he was very good with the horse riding as well, though.
So yes, I heard he's very good. I mean, imagine if that was modern day.
What's your skill? Horse riding.
Pretty good at horse riding. Oh, poor boy. There's the jobs in it.
Funny thing, you mentioned his dad actually.
Yeah.
His dad had a big influence in his life.
Yeah.
So his dad would write those. I think they were born in Ohio, Cincinnati. They were born in Ohio.
Yeah.
And
is that up north?
Midwest.
Okay.
Midwest, what we know as America, but it is in the northern side of the Midwest. Yeah. And his dad would famously write against slavery. He was an abolitionist.
He was an abolitionist, yeah.
Yeah. And it was steeped in the family, really, about anti-slavery. But interesting fact, he married a woman whose family owned slaves.
Right. And
big conflict with the family, with his father's side.
Right. So and so wasn't it the guy Ron
Chernow.
So he was talking about this, and he was sort of, because Ulysses, his whole life was sort of this weird. He's caught in the middle of two sides.
Literally,
because he's in the Civil War. So, and he was fighting against, Robert Lee, who he went to school with.
Yeah,
so that's kind of absolutely bonkers.
But
it's like us fighting. I'd win. Anyway,
we'll see about that.
You
would win, by the way. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, you think I got the strategic skills?
Yeah.
But
no, not strategic. I suffer from, as you know,
severe cowardice.
Severe
cowardice. I actually need to have less cowardice than you, and I'll probably prevail.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting. So, his family apparently avidly against slaves, which, and it's like, I don't really know much about American history, but that in itself seemed strange to me, because I thought sort of, from what I've seen in films and just heard, I thought that slavery was pretty entrenched in all of America, but it seemed
so it's mainly entrenched in the South.
Right, yeah.
So actually, I guess we should talk a little bit about how America came to be in the 1850s, right?
Yeah.
So they initially Thomas Jefferson, who wrote the Declaration of Independence, had this is what I think about all of these famous historical figures who had a lot of ambition. They were writing for posterity. They knew they were going to be famous,
They knew that they were writing.
Yeah, it was going to be remembered. So Thomas Jefferson owned a lot of slaves, over 200 slaves.
Okay.
But in his first draft of the Declaration of Independence, he writes something that King George III has waged a war against nature by promoting slavery and the slave trade.
Okay.
Yes, but it's the one passage that gets struck down from the Declaration of Independence.
So politicians have being politicians right from the start.
Oh, yeah. He was actually having an affair with his wife's half-sister, who was an African-American slave.
His wife's half-sister was
Sally Hemings.
Wow, so he really had skin in the game.
Yeah, okay. But anyway, so the initial...
Literally. Sorry, carry on.
So the compromise was that blacks were 3/5 of a white man in the American... Exactly.
That's so precise.
Yeah, so precise. Why don't you say, not a man, but 3/5? But
3/5.
And it also gave an unfair...
So more than half.
Well, how generous of them.
More than half,
yeah. But that also gave the southern states a lot of power.
Okay.
Because if you look at it, the black people aren't allowed to vote.
Yeah.
They don't have any political rights. They're slaves, but they're counted as 3/5 of a man, right?
Right.
So when the population of the state is counted, those 3/5 add up.
Oh, did they still have their voting based on...
No, so they're voting... so each state is allocated representatives in the House of... allocated seats in the House of Representatives based on population.
And they included
Exactly.
3/5 of a man as population, but not enough to vote.
Yeah, so
whoa, that's
even
rigged.
that it was rigged. So these white Southern plantationists had a huge benefit. They got a larger share of the House of Representatives, but a large section of that state couldn't vote for them. They couldn't vote against them.
So did they... Okay, first of all, who decided 3/5? Was this a committee?
So it was
doing maths and long division?
It was during the Constitutional Convention.
Okay.
So our man Alexander was there.
Oh man, yeah.
James Madison was there. Alexander Hamilton was against slavery, but then there was again, nations are built out of compromises, right?
Yeah.
So their main focus was let's build a constitution,
Yeah.
and the way we could integrate the South was having the 3/5 compromise.
So 3/5 of a man, they decided that. And they didn't see the contradiction of being like, we're just going to give the South a whole bunch of population, and then we're going to give them votes, or like, representatives based on that population.
But you have to understand,
but those people can't vote.
The South was the most powerful region then. So they really needed the South, because there was like, those days, the main economy was cotton farming, tobacco farming.
So is this before the days of New York? And the West Coast.
So at the time of America's independence, the richest state is actually Virginia.
Okay.
That's the reason why George Washington was made the president. They realized we have to get Virginians involved into the constitutional process.
Oh my word! Okay.
And in fact, during independence, the southern states had almost no debt.
Wow.
But the northern states had the debt. So the southern states were politically, like, look at the first few presidents, right?
Yeah.
You had the first, you had three, if you include George Washington, there were, amongst the first 6 presidents, 4 of them were from Virginia.
Wow. Okay.
George Washington, Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe.
It's like their equivalent of Eton.
Yeah, exactly. And 2 of them were from Boston, but they were father-son.
Okay, wow. Okay.
So
who were they?
John Adams and John Quincy Adams.
Cool. Okay.
John Quincy Adams actually was president, and then after he lost his second term, even him becoming president is a big, complicated story. We'll deal with it when we talk about John.
Oh man, UG today.
UG, yeah. But it's important to understand the context behind the place where he came in. And John Quincy Adams, after he lost his second term for the presidency, went back to Congress and was a great advocate against slavery.
Okay.
Have you seen the movie Armistead?
No, is it good?
It's a good movie.
Watch it.
Morgan Freeman's in it. Anthony Hopkins is in it.
Oh, hell.
It's about a real event. It's about a ship that...
I've heard of it, yeah. Now that you're saying it, I've heard of it. I haven't seen it.
Matthew McConaughey's in it.
Oh, also cast.
Good
is
cast.
it recent or a long time
No,
ago?
1999.
Oh, wow.
So relatively...
long time ago. Okay, that's cool.
Steven Spielberg.
Okay, I'll definitely watch it. Yeah. It must be good.
It's a good movie. But anyways, let's move on. Throughout the 1850s and 1840s, the largest question was whether slavery would be expanded or should there be restrictions, because clearly the North had started to outlaw slavery. New York had outlawed slavery.
What led to that divide then? What led to the North saying
the economy.
Okay.
The North wasn't reliant. So economy played a large part. North wasn't relied on slave labor.
And so they genuinely did oppose it on a moral ground?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the South...
That's actually quite refreshing.
Oh, absolutely.
It's quite
Absolutely. Nice. And in fact, you know how much of a fan of America I am.
Really?
Yeah.
Even nowadays. God.
Yeah. And you'll see why, though, because the entire Civil War in itself is a remarkable story.
Okay. Which Grant was like at the center of.
At the center of. But so throughout the 1850s and 1840s, the largest question was, should slavery be expanded? Mm-hmm. So as more states started being incorporated into the Union, such as Kansas and Missouri, which should be a slave state, which should not be a slave state.
Wow, okay.
Yeah? These were important discussions. And slowly, the realization came with the South that they were on the losing side, because more states were outlawing slavery.
Right, okay.
And so, when Abraham Lincoln, who's this strident abolitionist...
Yeah.
In fact, the thing about Abraham Lincoln was he wasn't actually an abolitionist in the start. He didn't say he wanted to outlaw slavery.
Okay.
He just wanted to say, let's outlaw the expansion of slavery.
Okay. And then did he up his position, or
So
people that
we'll
later said he was?
So
abolitionist?
we'll talk about why they did it in the end, why he adopted a more anti-slavery stance. But he initially ran on, let's not expand slavery, and he won the election by a reason, like it was a 4-man race
for the presidency.
Okay.
Okay.
And what happens is, those days, you know how the president elections in November and he swears in January?
Yeah.
Those days he would swear in March.
Wait, even longer.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a long waiting period.
Yeah.
And during which time the president at the time, Buchanan, what happened was all the southern states started seceding.
Seceding.
Yeah, from the Union.
Oh, okay.
And started forming the Confederacy.
Also, it was literally because he got voted in.
Yeah.
That they were like,
Yeah.
man, this is the plot of Star Wars.
It
This is literally what happens in Star Wars. Okay, that's cool.
So, where was I?
So we're getting to the start of what kicked off the Civil War. So who threw the first stone? That's what I want to know.
Interesting you bring that up. So, I'm forgetting... sorry, by the way, I said the Kansas-Missouri Compromise. It's the Kansas-Nebraska Compromise.
Okay.
My bad, yeah. Kansas became a free state, Nebraska being the slave state, I think.
Nebraska.
Yeah,
That's where
and-
Penny's from Big Bang Theory.
I think so, yeah.
Little facts
Yeah.
for you there. That came up in my research as well.
Anyways, the way the Civil War initially started was Lincoln was smart. Lincoln knew, so technically, I guess, southern states could secede from the Union because the Union came in with 13 colonies banding together.
Right, so okay, let me ask some ignorant questions.
Okay.
Before this point, is it the United States of America, or is that name coming later?
So the official name, so those days, they used to say these United States.
These United States, and that includes North and South.
Yeah, all
So
the states, yeah.
okay, yeah.
No, sorry, they used to say the United States are,
Okay.
like a plural.
Okay.
The
yeah.
United States are going to do this, or
Okay.
they are this.
Okay, yeah.
They are a country of this.
Yeah.
After the Civil War, it became the United States is.
Oh, okay, cool.
Grammatically incorrect because United States means plural.
Yeah, yeah,
But
sure,
it became one unified country. So what happened was, I'm getting the details wrong actually. So there was this military base within within an island off the coast of South Carolina, North Carolina, one of the states that seceded from the Union.
Yeah.
And Lincoln intentionally refused to attack the Confederacy first. So he stationed his
So both sides have been gearing up, arming
yeah
up,
gearing up
and they're
even
basically
before.
just waiting for someone else to attack.
How crazy was Lincoln's job, by the way? He gets sworn in, by which time states have already seceded.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this military base of the coast of the Carolinas, the Confederacy attacks the Union military base, and by which point,
They kick off the.
but that military base was within Southern Territory.
Okay.
So they're saying, no, it's our territory, and since we're no longer part of the Union, we could attack them. So Lincoln was smart politically.
That's cheeky.
So
Okay,
Lincoln
yeah.
was smart, and that kicked off the Civil War.
That's
By the way,
cheeky.
to those listening, I might be getting a lot of things wrong. Please leave the comments in the
I don't
in
know
the
that.
YouTube.
So I'm gonna repeat these facts. as facts.
You know what? Let me just check, okay? I don't wanna say something completely incorrect.
What's interesting, because I'm just thinking, okay, what if who was Lincoln running against? I know we're not talking about Lincoln, but this whole era is kind of interesting to me. So, who was Lincoln running against? Do you know?
So the president before that was James Buchanan.
And so was he running again?
Uh,
And Lincoln was opposing him. So,
So-
I'm just wondering if.
So this is what happened, by the way. Lincoln was the first Republican president as well. So, like,
Republicans, the best party.
but that time it was.
Yeah.
In the election of 1860, there was like a lot of opponents.
Yeah.
A lot of people who were running. There's 4 major candidates. So
yeah,
it wasn't
that's
just a
cool,
one.
actually.
It wasn't a one candidate, a 2 candidate race.
cool.
So there was a lot of people running in that election, and so he just sort of squeaked through. Like he obviously got a majority of the electoral college,
Yeah.
but he didn't get a major portion of. I'm just going to get the numbers out. So, Buchanan didn't run actually.
Okay.
Buchanan didn't run, so Lincoln got only 39.8% of the vote.
Wow. Okay.
Not close to 40. Like 4 people ran.
But then he trounced the other guys.
Yeah, yeah. And in fact, he became famous before this. So Lincoln's only experience was 2 years in the House of Representatives.
Okay.
he became famous because when he tried to run for Senate, he had these great debates with the Illinois senator at the time, Stephen A. Douglas.
Okay.
And these debates were publicized all over America.
Cool.
And that's how everyone had come to know of Abraham Lincoln.
So I'm just wondering, so if one of these other Joes here, John
Bell,
Breckinridge,
John C.
John
Breckinridge,
Bell, or Stephen A. Douglas,
yeah,
if one of them won, would someone else, would the states still have seceded? Would a civil war still have started?
Probably not.
Really?
So Lincoln was the.
What is Lincoln's fault?
Well,
Yeah.
could say so, but again, it showed what a difficult job Lincoln had. He didn't even say he wanted to ban slavery. He just said he wanted to stop the expansion of slavery. So again, this is the tumultuous period.
Okay, so
let's-
the Civil War kicks off.
Yeah.
Civil War kicks off, but by this point, Grant's already had a whole. He's had half a life, isn't he?
Yeah,
He's
yeah.
done
So-
loads of stuff by this point.
So Grant had, after graduating from West Point,
Which he wasn't even that great at West
He was
Point,
in
was
the lower
He was
half
like
of the class.
21st out of 39.
Yeah.
And
He's
then
like an
he's-
Abbey Banerjee student.
And then whereas, tell me if I'm wrong, but then Robert Lee, the other guy, the other side of that coin,
Yeah.
was like second.
Robert Lee was exactly. Robert Lee was a fantastic academic.
He was just
In
the
fact,
mouse.
Lincoln even offered to Robert E. Lee the generalship of the Union Army.
Wow. Okay.
But Robert E. Lee was from Virginia and, in my opinion, a slave-owning racist.
Yeah.
And had no desire to fight against slavery.
In the game Assassin's Creed 3, he is also portrayed as this.
You see, this is what really annoys me. So we'll
That's a bad guy.
deal with this more. Why someone like our man UG has had a bad name because of Southern historians trying to defame him.
So that's what I heard.
But
yeah.
So, sorry, go on.
Well, no, it's just interesting. So because like him and I just find it really fascinating. Like him and his well, I don't know if they were mates. I really don't know. But he fought alongside Lee in the Mexican War.
Yeah.
So
And in the Mexican War,
brothers in arms.
this is the difference.
They went to school together, and then they're on opposite sides.
Grant comes out of the Mexican War saying, "What have we done?
Yeah.
What have we done?
Yeah.
This was an unjust war
Yeah.
waged by a more powerful country on a weaker country, taking a third of Mexico's territory."
So I kept hearing Mexican War. And I was like, what the hell is it?
That's
I've
what
never heard. What's the Mexican War? And it's just
California, Texas.
It's just where America was like, this is ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this stuff, this is ours now.
Yeah.
And they just annexed it.
Yeah. In a brutal war.
And they just took it, and then it's just rings of. It's just interesting because recently Russia, Ukraine.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, this is outrageous. I can't believe.
Like the nerve of the American president saying,
Yeah.
you cannot do this.
This is disgusting. And you look at this, like, you just took.
You took a third of your neighbor's territory.
All of Mexico because you wanted it. But I thought it was.
But interestingly, Grant recognizes it's not a good war. It's not a just war.
Yeah.
And I think that separates Grant from many of his compatriots. He realized, hey, I know I'm a soldier, I'm having to fight this war. But he had a conscience.
Yeah, and he also seemed to, again, from the 25 minutes of research, he always seemed like he was very conscientious. And he thought a lot. He understood the military. He understood his soldiers. He was very sensitive with them. He was one of them, yeah. Not like the typical general sitting behind.
No, because that's mainly because he wasn't meant to be a great military commander. He came out very low in his West Point class when the
He
civil.
didn't want to be there, did he? His dad made him go.
No, exactly.
And apparently he was while West Point while he was there, apparently there was student protest, whatever, to shut it down. They were trying to get the government to shut down West Point, and he was a holy part of it. He was like, "Yeah, I hate this place. Get rid of it."
No, he was more interested in riding his horse.
Yeah, which he was good at.
He was very good at. So basically, when the Civil War starts, a lot of these great generals, a lot of these great officers are in this Confederate army. So there's a dearth of Confederate officers.
All the big war men are Southern.
And what's happened is there's a shortages of officers. And before the war, you wouldn't have expected Grant to be remembered. Grant would have thought you had no one would have mentioned his name after he died.
Yeah.
He was nearly 40. He hadn't accomplished anything. He was working. underneath his 2 younger
That's
brothers.
it, yeah, he was working as a clerk for his younger brothers.
Yeah,
and
in a leather shop.
Yeah, he was doing nothing, and like didn't before that he was like, oh, I'll just be a farmer. Or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
I'll just do.
In fact, he had to beg his father, and before that, his father-in-law for money. Like he was a poor man. Before we move forward, we have to acknowledge he did have slaves.
Yeah,
But he never owned the slaves.
Yeah.
So his wife came from a slave-owning family.
Yeah.
His father-in-law gave his the entire land that he farmed on. His wife, he never owned it. It was given to his wife by his father-in-law, and they had slaves within that territory. And his father-in-law gave him personally 1 slave, which he freed within a year. And he could have paid. He could have sold that slave off for a lot of money.
and that's when he needed it as well.
Exactly.
He needed money.
He didn't do it.
He didn't do it.
He freed him.
I thought it was cool.
Yeah. Look, he's not a perfect man, but he did. Like he specifically made it clear. No, these are not my slaves.
Yeah, that's pretty ballsy.
Bit of a feminist as well. He realized the woman should control the purse in a family.
Really, I'm all for that.
I'm all for that as well.
I'm all for that.
From someone who is
Dear,
not good at budgeting.
Please sort out the finances, darling. I really don't want it.
So, anyways, when the Civil War starts, it's a meteoric rise. Within 2 months of the Battle of Fort Stumpton, I think, he becomes a colonel. Within 4 months after that, he becomes a brigadier general. 10 months after that, he becomes a major general. And by the end of the war, he's the commander of the Union Army, commanding 1 million men. This is a man who's never...
1 million men.
Million men. This is a man who's never owned a business, never had anyone under him before.
1 million men.
Million men.
Well, see, this is what. Again, I forgot his name again, but the writer of
Ron Chernow.
He was saying how, because this guy's read all his memoirs, read all his letters, he's done actual research instead of 25
Not like
minutes.
schmucks like us.
Not like us, but. And he was saying how like Grant seemed. He's so humble, but also he fitted into just being in a position of immense power really well. Like he was very clear, very
He had clear
level-headed,
objectives, yeah.
Which is awesome.
We must understand why he got promoted so quickly. Because the Union Army generals sucked.
Okay.
They were losing battle after battle. Even though they had more men.
Oh, so the war started before he was promoted?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I didn't know that.
Like, he started off as an officer.
Okay.
And he moved very quickly in the ranks during the war. Because the Union Army was just losing.
Shit.
Because Lincoln had, unfortunately, terrible generals.
Yeah.
People who...
Did Grant make the difference in the war?
Yeah.
He literally single-handedly...
Yeah, he changed the course for the Union Army.
Could you imagine how much different the world would be?
So who was the general before Grant? Is it Sherman? Forgetting.
That sounds familiar.
Anyways, so it's crazy. Even though the Union Army had more men, more resources, it was doing terribly.
Right, okay. Because all the smart generals happened to be Southern. So with Southern America was the powerhouse of America.
So at this point, it wasn't as imbalanced during the Revolution.
Okay.
But what happened was during the initial revolutionary years, the North had become more prosperous through industry. The Industrial Revolution had come, so like the northern states had become more powerful as well.
Okay.
They were less reliant, but no, like yeah. So before Grant, it was General Sherman, who was a good friend of Ulysses S Grant, but he wasn't a good general.
Was he the one who defended Grant against all of his accusations of
As a drunkard and everything.
as a
Butcher.
just being alcoholic?
Yeah.
Kinda.
Interesting, actually. I think we must acknowledge he was a drunkard.
Well, see,
What he would do is
yeah,
he wouldn't drink before a battle.
yeah.
So after a battle would be over.
Boys, I'll be sober by the time we get there.
So after the battle would be over, he'd tell his second in command, "You take in charge. I'll be gone for 2 days." Could you imagine army general? Yeah, exactly. You'd go all out. Exactly.
Oh my, that sounds actually pretty good.
Yeah, you'd go all out.
He's got it out of his system.
Yeah, and then
got it into his system and then subsequently out of it.
so you'd come back after 2 days later, all refreshed.
Wow. Well, see, I'm assuming you've listened to the Ron,
I've been listening to it for the last week or so.
and he was describing it in a way that was and I don't know the history, but apparently Ulysses Grant UG was just paraded as he's a drunkard.
Yeah.
In history, he's just a drunkard,
a butcher. And this is the Southern historians. It's the lost cause historians. It's the, what is it called? The Danning School of History.
Right,
and what happened was, so after the Civil War had ended, Lincoln, quite in a magnanimous gesture, and Grant welcomed the Southern states back. The citizens back. Obviously, there was Reconstruction. We'll talk about Reconstruction a bit later. But they were in a forgiving mood. And the Southern states started propagating their theory of history that, the Southern generals, such as Robert E. Lee, were gentlemen and everything. And it was Ulysses S Grant. The only reason he won was because he was a butcher and he was a drunkard. No. Robert E. Lee was a terrible man. There's this myth that the Southern... You hear this now as well. You know what Americans, as some people in the South say, why they fought the Civil War?
No.
Not about slavery.
The War of
Northern Aggression.
Yeah.
Or property rights.
Yeah.
They never mention what was this property that they
were...
were...
Right.
That they were under question.
Oh, that's... property rights.
Yeah, what freedom was the North trying to curtail?
Imagine the situation. You say, white slave owner stand next to his slaves like, yeah, this is a war of property rights, and the black guy's just like, is he talking about us? Us? Are we the property? Oh God, I think we're the property.
Yeah, so
that's mental.
They literally felt they were being they were oppressed, but not being allowed to oppress other people. So,
but the thing is, he was an alcoholic, right?
He was an alcoholic that didn't affect his. It was documented, but.
Because was he on rehab, or there was a doctor
He was in numerous periods of his life where he tried to get out of alcohol.
But the way Ron was describing it was Ron.
I just want to say,
I can't remember his surname. Every time he Cherno.
Yeah.
Ron Cherno. Okay. RC and UG.
Yeah, RC and UG.
Anyway, yeah. In his book, he was saying how essentially he was. If you look at it now, he displays the traits of an alcoholic, not a drunkard like someone who's just a bum,
who's always just drunk,
around, who's just has no substance to him. He was an alcoholic in that when he had one drink, he couldn't put them down. And the reason he started was out of just sheer loneliness. He missed his wife and his family. He was taken away from them before they were even wed, right? They were to be married, and he got taken away.
He was in the army then.
Yeah, and he was and so he was just lonely, and he missed her and his family. And that drove him to the bottle, which I think is a very human story.
Exactly, and it's such a human story. Like, I think thing with UG here is, I don't see a remarkable man. I see an imperfect man every day trying to get better. Like, I can't be as smart as Alexander Hamilton or Jefferson, but I think normal people can try to be like this guy. This guy has a lot of faults. He's quite a shy character.
Well, yeah, it almost seemed like he wasn't trying to be either. He was perfectly happy to be like, yeah, this is my life now. But he was put into situations. He was thrust almost like a reluctant leader.
Yeah.
Like he was put into these positions. And often it seems like they're the best
to
be in that
because they don't have the political ambition.
Yeah, they weren't craving for the power. They were just sort of put there.
So we'll see how that sort of backfired for him later on.
I love it. Oh, yeah, I love it.
Yeah, so it comes in a story. So again, I don't know the entire details about the Civil War.
Yeah.
But the South was, I wouldn't say winning, but they were reaching a state where they were aiming for a stalemate. Yeah, so Lincoln promotes Grant as head of the army, and Grant leads the Union Army from mediocrity to victory. And it's a great military accomplishment by Grant. And we must understand that he was also, not only was he a patriot to his country, but he had a deep belief what the war was being fought for.
Okay.
So many people in the North were saying, okay, banning slavery need not be the main cause.
Okay.
Sorry, it's a phone. Let me switch off my phone here.
Tell you, phone's a bit popular, man.
It's Nick.
Is it the descendants of Robert Lee calling to correct some of your facts?
Maybe, who knows?
I tell you what, Robert Lee was a gentleman. Let me tell you.
No, what I was going to say is, during this initially part of the Civil War, many in the North didn't want to ban slavery. They thought, why agitate the South? The South is seceded, so let's get the South back, but never by any means. Do you know the reason So Abraham Lincoln initially was hesitant on abolishing slavery because Delaware, which was part of the Union, still had slaves. And some of the border territories still had slaves.
Okay.
So even though Lincoln was personally opposed to slavery, and I only know this from Doris Kearns Goodwin, like there's reason to believe Lincoln was against slavery. He was obviously against the expansion of slavery. One of the reasons why he did the Emancipation Declaration was to prevent the British from intervening.
Okay.
Yeah, because Britain couldn't politically intervene in the side of the South when the South were trying to preserve slavery. And the only way this war could become, so the only way that Britain could not take sides is if the North made a clear stand saying, no, we're fighting this war to end slavery.
Huh, okay. That's interesting.
That is interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And but even with the Emancipation Declaration, it was a flimsy order. It was an executive action. So it was imperative that the 13th Amendment got passed that abolished slavery. And Ulysses S Grant was fully lockstep in hand with Lincoln. He thought this was the perfect opportunity to finally get an amendment through and ban slavery.
Is this coming from an abolitionist family? Is that why he felt this way?
Because
Or
the
he
black people,
just felt right to
African Americans, had fought in the Civil War.
Okay.
And yeah, he was always against slavery. He was brought up with a abolitionist father, and obviously he wasn't like a John Brown, like an anarchist. But he had always harbored anti-slavery sentiments, and he thought this was a golden opportunity. Like 600,000 have been dead in this war. It better be worth something.
That's quite a nice sentiment.
And yeah, that's how the 13th Amendment was pushed through. But as the 13th Amendment gets pushed through, just during the lame duck session of Lincoln's first term, Lincoln does, in my opinion, a historic blunder. He doesn't know if he's going to unify the country, because the war isn't finished yet, right? And in the early parts of 1960, it was by no means clear that Lincoln would win re-election.
Right.
So, but the mid part of 1960, the war had turned around.
I hope you mean 1860.
Sorry, am I saying? Yeah, sorry.
Otherwise, my history
Sorry,
is
my bad.
very
1860. Sorry, my bad. In 1860, Lincoln. It was in the beginning of 1860. It was by no means certain that Lincoln would win the war, win the election, and continue the war, because a lot of people in the North were saying, "No, let's just say we won't ban slavery," and
They was weary of the
yeah,
war.
yeah, and because 600,000 people died.
Was it?
So-
and this is the kind of thing I don't. Was it a war that was felt everywhere, or was it only on the
It
front?
was fought
line?
everywhere.
It was fought everywhere.
Because
Right.
no, it was fought on the front lines. So it was fought in the border states, but everyone's family was impacted.
Right. Okay.
Everyone got enlisted, even the rich,
Right.
even the educated. In fact, unlike the Revolutionary War, Ron Chernow mentions this, a large portion of college-educated people went to fought in the Civil War.
Went and died.
Yeah,
Jeez. Okay.
and that's why we have a better a written recount of the Civil War.
Right. Okay.
But anyways, Lincoln chooses as his vice president for his second term a Southern Democrat. Those is the Democrats were the bad people, by
That's
the way.
clever.
Not you think clever.
This is
You
blunder.
think clever. It was a huge blunder. We'll see why. Andrew Johnson was the only Southern senator who didn't resign from the Senate.
Okay.
He stayed in the Senate because he was against seceding, but he was a racist. He had nothing. He didn't have any reservations against slavery.
Okay.
But vice president doesn't have any power, right?
Oh. Okay.
Like it's a figurehead position.
Okay. I can see this going south.
I think
But
you
yeah.
know how the story ends. So Lincoln, after the 13th Amendment gets passed in Appomattox, Ulysses S. Grant accepts the surrender of the Confederate Army. Thankfully, the amendment been passed by Congress a few weeks before. Good. It looks like this is going to be a good victory here. We've got a president who believes in civil rights. We've got the hero of the hour, Ulysses S. Grant. They're going to work together. Unfortunately, Lincoln goes to a play, and he gets assassinated.
Not a play.
He gets
John Wilkes Booth.
John Wilkes Booth gets assassinated, and who becomes president?
God
This
damn.
racist Andrew Johnson.
For how long?
So Lincoln just started his second term.
4 years.
So 4 years. And but
to be fair, if that's Lincoln's biggest blunder, getting shot.
No, biggest blunder is choosing Andrew Johnson.
But like, and the reason that became a blunder is because he got assassinated.
Yeah.
Like,
but
fair enough.
But
I tend to make plans as if I'm going to stay alive.
That's true. That's true.
That's fair
but
enough.
you know what they say? Like the most important decision a president makes, or a running for president makes.
Who he's running with?
Who is he running with?
Yeah.
Like,
so he tried to do a political move.
Yeah.
That he took a risk.
Yeah. And he got assassinated, and Johnson becomes president, and this is a disaster.
This is a little aside.
Sure.
But I thought it was interesting because Grant and Lincoln were quite close, right?
Yeah,
For a long time.
Grant wept openly in Lincoln's funeral.
Yeah, and so like there's stories of like even earlier when I can't remember, someone told Lincoln, they were like, "You know this Grant dude? You know he's a drunkard, like he's a drunk, and he was such a successful general. He was like, really? What's he drinking? Give it to our other generals because he's doing awesome."
Yeah, he changed the course of the war. Yeah, so they were good friends. They were good buddies.
And so for that play, Grant got an invitation. He was like,
Yeah.
"Hey, do you want to come? We're going to a play."
His wife said, "Don't go for." I'm forgetting what reason.
I forget the reason, but
Yeah.
it was completely.
Yeah.
He could have gone.
The plan was, by the way, to assassinate Lincoln, Andrew Johnson, and Ulysses S Grant.
right, and so he was nearly there.
Yeah.
But just to twist face, mate, Link, I can't make it. I'm sorry. And he gets shot.
It's crazy
That's
how one
bonkers
small
to me.
thing affects such a big thing in history.
That's
how
crazy.
it later plays on, like the butterfly effect.
That's absolutely crazy. That's a good film, by the way.
It is a good film.
Can you tell me about this unconditional surrender? Because apparently he I don't know if it's the same thing, but he captures three Confederate armies. He captured three of them, including Lee, right?
Yeah. Robert E. Lee surrendered.
And then Robert E. Lee surrendered, and going back to how sort of humble he kind of was.
He doesn't require all of them to surrender their arms.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Well,
He lets them keep their mules and everything.
Oh, and apparently also he was when Lee surrendered, because he knows Lee. He's like, I think he wrote it. He was like, oh, it was really sad to see such a well-respected, brilliant general get defeated. I was like, wow. That's
In fact, his wife said, "Go to Richmond."
What's
Richmond was the capital of the Confederacy,
right.
and you've just won the war. Go to Richmond as a conqueror. He said no, because that's going to rub salt to the wound.
Yeah.
They've just been defeated. Let's not do
No,
that.
they need to rub their face in it.
I don't think I am big enough to do that if I just fought a war.
You go to Richmond.
Yeah, I'd go to Richmond.
You should be like, you should go to Richmond. You're like, I'm already there. I'm
I'm right there. I'm right there.
I'm already there.
Can't hear you.
They hate me. It's fantastic.
Very
Really good.
humble character.
So he captured three Confederate armies. That's huge. And apparently, and I thought this was funny. So Ulysses S Grant, U.S. Grant. Apparently his nickname was Unconditional Surrender Grant. After that,
Really?
which I think is brilliant.
Did not know that. That's a good nickname.
I think isn't it?
That's a great nickname.
Imagine that's your nickname. Oh, why do they call you Unconditional Surrender Grant? Wow.
Interesting story. There.
Interesting story, yeah. I single-handedly conquered the South, and they unconditionally surrendered.
One thing I forgot to mention, by the way, the dark chapter when he's commanding the armies.
Okay.
He does an anti-Semitic order.
what does he do?
So it's called General Order Number 11.
Is this where the butcher stories came from, or
No. Butcher was like,
just because he killed loads of guys?
and that he was willing to. Well, the South always claimed that he was willing to sacrifice his own men for just so they win the war. Like he was willing to let more of his men die, just so that they could win the battle.
Right. Okay.
But I don't think that it's a Southern perspective.
Okay. Take it with a pinch of salt.
Take it with a grain of salt, and it's obviously not true because the Union Army was losing far more men before he took command.
Right.
He started winning battles.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
So I guess no one likes the person who's defeating you.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
But yeah, so he basically tells. So when he's ruling over Mississippi, Tennessee, and Kentucky during the war, he says that all the Jews have to be evacuated.
Okay.
And he claimed it was for corruption and everything.
Okay.
And when Lincoln found out, he cancelled the order.
Oh wait, so he said they should be evacuated to where?
From outside the military zone.
Oh, and why did he want that? Because he didn't like Jews.
So he gives the reasoning that at the time that Jews were controlling the business and everything, and they were doing corruption and everything.
Okay.
It was a disgusting order.
Okay.
Terrible. And I thought about this. How do I think about UG now? Our good man Ulysses. How do I think about this? And I guess you have to look at it in totality. So when he became president, he appointed more Jewish Americans to political office than any other president before him. He was the first American president to attend a synagogue. Was heavily criticized the pogroms against the Jews in Europe. And after his he tried to say, "Look, I'm sorry."
Right. Okay.
He
I can tell you like this guy.
I do like this
I can
guy.
tell you like this guy.
And he tried to say, "Look, I was wrong."
Well, I mean, it sounded like he wasn't. He didn't tell them. He didn't kill them all, right?
No. He didn't kill them.
was just like, "Get out of
evacuated
here."
them. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that's kind of weird. That would be weird.
That is bad.
Like,
But as I said, it's
just to abuse your power, but like, you know what? While I'm here, Jews, fuck off. That's kind of intense.
and he always accepted that. No, I should not have done that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a thing we need to know. We need to keep that in mind.
No, yeah. So yeah, that's a weird one. I mean, and it seems like he purely just thought lowly of Jewish people
Well,
at that time.
Well, no, he had Jewish American friends, and the Jewish Americans voted for him overwhelmingly. But again, this is my bias coming in.
Yeah.
Okay, take it with a pinch of salt. But his theory was, no, I'm not anti-Jewish. It's just that the Jews in this town were controlling the businesses and they were doing corruption. And I think that's very anti-Semitic. You can't just kick out innocent people from their homes.
I'll tell you what makes it anti-Semitic is
They're controlling business.
No. Just like if you start it by saying, "Listen, I'm not anti-Semitic, but,
Yeah.
but here's my thing."
Yeah, so it's an anti-Semitic order.
Right.
I'm not questioning whether the order was anti-Semitic. I'm questioning whether he was anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that one act defines him. Because he might have been anti-Semitic at that point, but he tried to redeem himself in that regard.
It also sounds like it was a weird time, right? Because back then it would have been very, very common
Anti-Semitism.
to just be anti-whatever. To be
Yeah.
I'm anti-blacks. Of course. I'm anti-whatever. It's just like a very...
He was a product of his
prejudiced-
time, but even then, he did try to help the Jews later on.
We haven't...
No one's
we forgot-
perfect.
We haven't even got to...
Indian
he was a
American.
president.
Oh, he was president. Yeah. Okay, before we get there, we have to talk about what he was doing. Andrew Johnson, when Andrew Johnson became president.
Okay, yeah.
So during the last bit of Lincoln's presidency, the 13th Amendment gets passed through Congress, both houses by 2/3 majority. You should watch the movie Lincoln. To those listening, I've been trying to convince Nathan to watch the movie for 4 years now.
I honestly, I will watch it, and I
Bullshit.
cannot wait to watch Lincoln Vampire Slayer. It's
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
so
No,
good.
you see,
I think it's going to be great.
This is the reason.
I've
Anyway,
always said this.
no, you know what? It's a lost cause. Anyway, so when Johnson becomes president, he's doing all sorts of measures to stop the civil rights agenda, right? During this period in the 1860s, 3 remarkable amendments gets passed. The 13th Amendment, which abolishes slavery, the 14th Amendment, which gives citizenship rights and equal protection to African Americans, and the 15th Amendment, which gives them voting rights. And Andrew Johnson fights this all the way. And he, in fact, vetoed, because he's a Southerner, and the Congress is ruled by radical Republicans.
Right, okay, right.
And that's what they were called, radical Republicans.
Right.
And they're
Are you
passing...
talking about then or now? Like,
No, but we like those sort of radical Republicans. They
we
were the
like
right
them.
side.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Really
we
good.
don't like... Yeah, they were the good people then.
right.
And they were passing civil rights act after another, and Johnson was vetoing everything.
Right.
He broke the record for presidential vetoes.
Right.
And the Congress...
No.
The Congress also broke the record of number of times they overturned a presidential veto by passing it by 2/3 majority.
Wow.
So this was a tumultuous period, and the Congress made some legislative protections to protect Grant here. So they passed this bill saying, what's the bill called? The Tenure of Office Act, which prevented Johnson from firing the people who Lincoln had appointed.
Oh. Okay.
Yeah. By the way, later it proved to be unconstitutional. By the way.
Okay.
So like what is it saying? Like so when Congress was passing all sorts of civil rights act, like a Civil Rights Act of 1868, which Johnson vetoed, Congress overrides the veto. Ulysses S Grant enforces it because he still has the military. He's still ruling. He's still head of the military at that point, right?
All right. So at this point,
He's
what's
serving
his
as
name?
he's serving like bitterly under Johnson,
Right, okay.
because he doesn't want to resign. Then Johnson gets to appoint a conservative man as the head of the army, and Johnson can't fire
So
Grant
again, Grant's locked in this position where he doesn't necessarily want to be there, but he has to.
because he's scared who's Johnson going to appoint.
Okay.
And I'm trying to find what was the law. So I think it's called the Command of Army Act. Yeah, the Command of Army Act. It prevented Johnson from firing Grant.
Okay.
And so the only way Johnson could appoint a racist, the chocolates are melting. Sorry.
I was about to eat a chocolate and it's very hot here. And this is now liquid. Anyway.
So Johnson can fire Grant. Grant is this massive public hero, right? And by the way, by this time, this is the process called Reconstruction.
Yeah,
you heard of
yeah.
Reconstruction?
So honestly, not until about an hour and a half ago.
Okay.
So basically, let me tell you what I think it is.
Okay, go on.
So this is after the war.
Yeah.
And this is when you're trying to heal the wound, right,
Sure.
of the Civil War,
Sure.
trying to reunite the country. The country.
You are, but there's also an understanding that the African Americans who have just been liberated, they need protection in the South, and
Okay.
most of the political leaders in the South are traitors.
Yeah.
They betrayed us.
Yeah,
They
yeah,
launched a war on us. So they didn't have proper delegation in Congress. That's how a lot of these bills got passed, by the way. Until Reconstruction was over, the states didn't have proper representation in Congress. Right? They were under military rule, essentially under curfew rule.
Right.
That's why if you look at like African American senators, you will see like a whole bunch of African American senators and governors in the Deep South in the 1860s. You think, how the hell did these people get elected? Right? No, it's because the Union Army, led by Grant, maintained law and order and ensured that the Republican governments established within the southern states was able to function, sustain itself.
A complete aside.
Go on.
But you just remind me about something. Is this anything to do with the Black Caucus?
No, the Black
Nothing to do with
Caucus was formed much later, 100 years from that.
Okay,
Yeah.
then we'll ignore it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there might, like, Black Caucus is basically people, like, those people were soon out of power when Reconstruction ended.
Okay.
And we'll see how Reconstruction was ended.
Okay.
Okay, so President Johnson is fighting Reconstruction tooth and nail. He wants to forgive and, like, completely embrace his, because he's a Southerner, right? He's from Tennessee. He doesn't want the southern states to be under military command.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's fighting them left, right, and center, and in fact, he becomes the first president to get impeached.
Oh.
Yeah.
Because he's just such a nuisance, or what?
Yeah. So the Congress is dominated by the radical Republicans, and so they introduce this bill as a trap. So they put this bill saying, what's the bill called? It's, by the way, it's a bit of a nonsense bill. If it went up to the Supreme Court for judicial review, it wouldn't pass now.
Okay.
It was nonsense. Like, oh, this is another thing. So you know how Trump has basically, it's a bit diversion, but I'll tell you why I'm saying it. So you know how Trump is appointing another Supreme Court justice in America?
Is he?
He is, yeah, because he's a president.
He wants a new one.
No, because that guy's retiring.
Oh.
And in America, you have 9 Supreme Court justices, and they're appointed for life until they retire.
Okay.
And it's a messed up system. And the only reason, there's no reason why it has to be 9.
Oh.
So when Lincoln was president, he increased it to 10. And when Lincoln died, the Republican Radical Congress reduced it to 9.
Just as a.
Just so Johnson couldn't appoint another judge.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
So they were putting all these sort of traps for him. And so who was it? So the Lincoln's secretary of the army. By the way, those days, you know what the defense secretary was called?
No.
Secretary for War.
Secretary for
Like,
War.
they were honest. At least they were honest. They knew that, you know what, we're a war-loving country.
What's your job title?
Yeah.
I'm the warmonger. That's what I am. What do you do?
So Edwin Stanton.
Yeah.
Edwin Stanton was Lincoln's initial appointee, Secretary of War. he fires him. Johnson fires him, and in an interim basis appoints Grant. And Congress says, no, you can't fire Stanton because we have a law saying you can only fire him with a Senate approval.
Okay.
So they say, no, you must reappoint Stanton. And Johnson is, in this meantime, telling Grant, don't resign before this bill can be passed, so I can appoint a successor of my choosing.
Right, okay.
Grant, who despises Johnson, resigns.
Whoa.
And Johnson still, Johnson breaking. I'm getting the details wrong, so anyone in the audience can explain it to me better. This is like a day, like half a day's of research.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyways, so Johnson's broken these congressional restrictions on who you can fire, who you can't fire in appointments, and they're going to impeach him. And he gets impeached by the House of Representatives, and he survives conviction in the Senate by one vote.
Whoa.
One vote. So he has, like, his own party doesn't endorse him for re-election. And by this time, since it's been quite public that our man UG has made an enemy of Johnson, the Republican Party unanimously appoints Grant as their presidential candidate of 1868.
So again, it almost seems like he accidentally did that.
So, so many
Or
accidents.
do you reckon he was planning to be president?
No, I don't think so.
Do you reckon he did that and
I think he wanted to be president.
Yeah.
So you'll see, he does have political ambitions.
Okay.
But he did want to become president. But I think, like, no one, I don't think, ever wants to be president for an evil reason, except for Donald Trump.
Okay.
Most people think that I'm the best man for the job. Like, this time, it needs someone like me.
Right.
Like, I know what is best.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure there was a bit of ego involved.
Yeah.
Okay, you don't run for president by accident.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyways,
You wake up drunk and
I'm president.
you put your name down.
with him, he was a drunk, so
Yeah, he could have.
he was an alcoholic. Sorry.
I was on a bender. I didn't mean to.
So interesting, by the way.
Yeah.
Election of 1868, he loses the white majority. He
Okay.
doesn't get a majority of the white vote,
Okay.
but becomes president because African Americans have pushed him over the
I
edge.
just love him.
They love him, and he wins by 300,000 votes. African Americans contribute 500,000 of that vote,
Oosh.
so it's
Pretty cool.
pretty close. And he wins, and he starts off his presidency. And his first speech. Now we're moving on to his presidency, by the way. In his first speech, he makes a historic declaration that his administration wants to protect Native Americans.
Ah.
He realizes, he says in his speech, that we have to respect their culture, their civilization, give them citizenship, because by this time, there's 250,000 Native Americans left. Most of them, unfortunately, have been killed by smallpox and genocide, and there's like 370 different treaties governing different Native American tribes. But this is the contradiction of Grant. He wants to do something about Native Americans, but during his presidency, one of the worst battles regarding Native Americans happened. Battle of Little Bighorn
Oh, I've heard of that.
with Custer.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Yeah, he's the president there, and he hates Custer. He says Custer has just inflamed the situation,
Jeez.
and 200 battles happen during his presidency with Native Americans. He's a president who for his time was very progressive with Native Americans. He wanted to integrate them, but in today's context, we would say, you know what? You wanted to make them white, and because he wanted to make them more westernized. But he's conflicted here. He's being pressurized to act on the Sioux Nation and all of these other nations for gold. Gold has been found in these territories, greater expansion, and he's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Why Native Americans? Because
Why did he have an affiliation?
Yeah, where'd that come from?
I think it might have been during the Mexican-American War.
Okay.
So he saw what the Americans had done to Latinos,
Yeah.
and ever since that, I think he had a soft spot for the underdog.
Right. Okay.
And it was historic, by the way. He appointed a Native American in charge of the Native American Commission, Indian American Commission. Never been done before. He appoints Native Americans to his cabinet, like to high government officials. He wants to
Yeah.
be the first president to like openly give rights to Native Americans. But unfortunately, as like a lot of things with history, some terrible incidents happen.
Yeah.
And whilst he might have had great intentions, it was a mixed record. But it was the first president, really, who acknowledged that injustice has been done and we must correct this.
You know, yeah, that kind of came out of nowhere because yeah, it's interesting because we talk about American history, and you know, as a Brit, I'm always like, America doesn't really have that much history. Like, it doesn't go back that far.
They're such great characters.
But also it's when I say that I mean like westernized like America, like the typical America I'm thinking of. There were people there long before
The Mayans, the Aztecs, yeah. Native Americans, yeah.
and Native Americans. It's kind of crazy how like Native Americans never get a mention in anything at all. Which is, like,
it's a shame.
It's crazy.
In fact, what's disgusted me now is, you know who Donald Trump has put the picture, which president has put the picture in his Oval Office?
Who?
Andrew Jackson, who was famous for creating the Trail of Tears.
What's the Trail of Tears?
Where they just butchered and killed and took away territory of Native Americans.
Jeez.
In fact, there's a very famous moment where the Supreme Court, so the Native Americans sue the government of Georgia, who was taking away their land. And the Supreme Court, John Marshall, says, no, the Native Americans are right.
Okay.
Back in the 1830s.
Yeah.
Yeah? Long before our man UG here. And Andrew Jackson says, okay, Justice Marshall, you've given your judgment. Let me see you enforce it. So he doesn't enforce the judgment.
Oh.
So this is the man who Donald Trump says is his hero.
Jeez.
Terrible
Well,
man.
I mean, it's a bit of an aside, but it's interesting that Grant would have picked that to make a stand on. Has there ever been any sort of recognition of Native Americans and what was done to them as a people, in the same way that, you know, African Americans, Germans have acknowledged and said.
You want to know something?
African American.
America hasn't ever given, I don't think, a formal apology.
That's the kind of that's the kind of thing.
African Americans either, nor Native Americans.
Wow.
By the way, do you know Britain, when it abolished slavery,
Yeah.
they gave reparations.
Okay.
Do you know to who? To slave owners.
Here we go. Is it?
Yeah.
Sorry about your property
Yeah.
that we took away.
Yeah.
Shit, that's kind of dark.
So obviously, like, Grant's presidency is historic in itself, right?
Yeah.
He's the first Republican president to complete 2 terms in office. Like, Lincoln dies a few months into his second term, right? And unfortunately, this is where his naivete comes in.
Okay.
So let's deal with the negatives first, okay? Because I want to end on a positive.
Okay.
So he appoints a lot of his friends, people who, like, not necessarily qualified people.
I'll do that.
For high office in the cabinet.
Hey mate, I'm president. Do you want to come?
And they're corrupt.
And
They start stealing. From
from what?
They start profiting from these high offices.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So during this time, by the way, there's a big push for a U.S. civil service reform.
Okay.
That everyone passes through, and you want a government job, you go to an exam and so, like you have in Britain. Grant officially supports the civil service reform, but doesn't do anything about it because he understands the power of patronage.
Okay.
And so it's a mixed baggage with the civil service reform, and that enabled greater corruption not by him, but by his lackeys.
Right. Okay.
Bad decision on his part.
Yeah, but he did push for civil service reform. I don't want to let it be said he didn't push for civil service reform, but he didn't ensure that his cronies
Did the same.
Followed the rule book here. And there was a lot of financial corruptions that went on. Unfortunately, a big might have been a worldwide economic depression happens. It's called the Panic of 1873.
Okay.
And America goes through a depression. And this is the time, by the way, America doesn't have a formal central bank.
Right.
That regulates inflation and things like that. So one of the good things that Ulysses S Grant does is he restores like the gold standard almost,
Okay.
the silver standard, and when you don't have a Federal Reserve, it's a good way of controlling inflation.
Right.
So that's a good thing he did on an economic front. But again, I'm not qualified to talk enough about his entire presidency. But one thing I do want to mention is what he did for African Americans.
What did he do
He
first?
launched a war on terrorism, on the KKK.
Did he? A war on terrorism?
Yeah.
Back in the day?
He destroyed the KKK.
Really?
He launched thousands of civil rights lawsuits against racist Southerners.
When did the KKK stop becoming a thing?
So there's multiple KKKs.
Okay.
So the first KKK was
There's a lot
by
of Ks.
General Forrest.
Okay.
By the way, Forrest Gump,
KK, yeah.
named after that forest.
Really?
Yeah, he says in the movie. My mother says I was named after a civil war hero.
Oh, God.
Civil war hero being this racist prick.
This guy got it.
Yeah. So he launches a war on the KKK, destroys the KKK
How?
by using the United States Army.
Oh, so he literally
Yeah. He
gets.
he destroys them.
Whoa. Okay.
He's
Just roaming the streets looking for them, or what?
no, he's like this is during Reconstruction, right?
Okay.
So most of these southern states under are like almost emergency rule here. So a lot of the southern states are still strong military presence.
Garrison.
Yeah, exactly, and they're propping up the radical Republican governments, the governors, and they destroy the KKK. He launched a war on the KKK.
Whoa.
During this time, the 15th and the 16th, sorry, the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment have come to play. There's a civil rights bill that he signs. I think the civil rights bill of 1876, 1875, and it gives access to the government facilities to African Americans. It's a landmark bill, and he truly wanted to be the president for African Americans. Unfortunately, this is what happens. He does a historic blunder. He tries to annex the Dominican Republic.
Why?
So his reasoning
What's
was,
there that he wants?
his reasoning was, if he annexes the Dominican Republic, he can pressurize Puerto Rico, which isn't part of America then, Cuba and Brazil, to abolish slavery.
Oh. Oh, okay. So he's
Yeah.
stepping out of the US
Yeah,
to
yeah, but he
spread his message.
yeah, but it divides the radical Republican and
So
party.
he loses mates.
Yeah, he loses mates.
people on his side.
He loses mates, especially the most pro-civil rights senator there was, Senator Charles Sumner.
Okay.
Okay, powerful senator.
Yeah.
He fights against President Grant's treaty to incorporate the Dominican Republic into the American Union, and Grant fails.
Oh.
And in an act of vindictiveness, almost, he pressurizes the Senate and his senators from his party to make Charles Sumner lose his chairmanship of the committees that he had.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah, and in fact, another faction breaks away from the radical Republican Party, called the Liberal Republican Party or something like that.
Okay.
And the political unity that propelled these great civil rights movements gets
So
divided.
Gets fractured.
Yeah. So like the by the way, he also did great environmentalism at Yellowstone Park.
No way.
Yeah, he helped
This guy's awesome.
Yeah. Helped protect Yellowstone Park, like over in terms of the fishing and the protecting the wildlife.
Jeez.
For the first few instances, but no. In terms of the Dominican, the bringing in of the Dominican Republic into the American Union, what it caused people like Frederick Douglass, who was working for Frederick Douglass, the famous African American activist, former slave himself. He was working for Ulysses S Grant, and he publicly gave support to Grant. But inwardly, they felt, no, this is a wrong thing to do, because they thought by conquering the Dominican Republic, it would prevent Afro-Caribbeans from getting their own freedom by themselves.
Oh, okay.
Their opposition was, it's depriving them of agency.
Right. Okay.
So it's very complicated. I think.
Yeah, that is kind of that's complex.
And
That's
they
a
thought
complex
it's a
issue.
new colonialism, and Grant thought what he could do is, by having African Americans go to a more safer place called in the Dominican Republic, which would be part of the United States, this labor shortage would cause Southern plantationists to realize, you know what, we need to pay workers.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So I would think he had good intentions, but
Questionable methods.
questionable methods, and
Wants to annex the Dominican Republic.
yeah.
For good reason.
Yeah, and I don't know what if there was a referendum if the Dominican Republic would have agreed or not. I don't know this, but it split the radical Republican vote. By the way, he did win re-election comfortably, even with all the corruption scandals that were initially creeping in. He was a beloved figure, right? But in the second term, a lot of these corruption scandals start coming in.
That he's been perfect.
Not him, his
the
cronies
people
that he
that-
appointed,
Right. Okay.
and he's too loyal to fire his friends. He's too loyal.
I'd fire the hell out of them.
I know you would.
I'd be like, you're dragging me down.
I know you would.
You need to go.
So as a result, his legacy has been a bit tarnished here by political corruption. He thinks of running for a third term. By the way,
You can do that.
those days there was no rule.
You can run forever.
Yeah, those days. FDR won 4 terms.
Didn't know that.
Yeah.
Fair play to it.
When we talk about FDR in another episode,
Yeah, let's do that.
we'll-
I honestly, I kind of want to learn about all the presidents now.
So let's end with Ulysses S. Grant, and let's end with the election of 1876.
Okay, but then can we talk about his memoirs?
Oh, well, okay. Actually, we also have to talk about the memoirs.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah.
Like what he did after his presidency.
Yeah.
So his presidency ends with the election of 1876.
Okay, hit me.
And one of the rare instances where the guy who wins the presidency loses the popular vote. Like Trump.
Wins the presidency, lost the popular vote. Okay,
Rutherford
so
B. Hayes.
for the exact same reasons as
Trump.
Because okay.
And those days, and a compromise.
How hard is it to count votes? Like
No, because of the electoral college. Here.
I know,
Yeah.
yeah.
And a compromise is made that the Democrats would not oppose the ascension of Rutherford B. Hayes, and they would transfer the necessary electoral college votes in his favor if Reconstruction ends.
Oh,
And that's how Reconstruction ends.
Okay.
And as a result of Reconstruction ending, all those African Americans who were elected to office loses power.
So when you say Reconstruction ends, so literally, it's like okay, the military they're going to bugger off. They're going to let the South do what they want.
Yeah, and Jim Crow starts
What's Jim Crow?
when they had all these racist laws
Ah,
that they only started getting rid of in 1960. So 100 years.
and that's the end of his presidency.
Yeah,
This happens.
yeah, because
Oh,
Rutherford B. Hayes wins.
What a crappy number to go out on.
Yeah, but that's nothing to do with him.
Yeah.
He had no involvement in this.
Yeah.
It's the political maneuvering between the Democrats and the Republicans.
Jeez.
And
So how old is he at this point?
I'll check. I don't know. I think
How long between this and him eventually getting cancer and passing away?
so. Let's talk about what he did after his presidency. He was, by the way, bankrupt after he left the presidency.
Was he?
Yeah, because of poor financial investments. He didn't enrich himself during the presidency.
Right.
It's important to note. So he died in 1885. He was 19. He born in 1822. So he was 60. Oh, very young actually, 63
Yeah.
when he died, and he stopped being president in 1876.
Right. Okay.
So he was like 56 when he wasn't president.
So he had like 7 years.
Yeah. So he went on this world tour, by the way, after his presidency. He was still rich then. He only became bankrupt a bit before he got his cancer because of terrible investments.
Yeah.
He went on his world tour, met Queen Victoria, and showed to the world America's a united country now, and it's becoming an emerging power.
Yeah. Take it seriously.
And anyways, let's end with this great story of how he writes his book.
Yeah. Well, actually, because I heard a controversy. Well,
Okay.
rumor.
Well, that Mark Twain.
Yeah.
Okay.
His
So his-
great literature.
So his best friend was one of his best friends was Mark Twain, the great
Yeah.
author, and he has mouth cancer, and he doesn't have any money, and he doesn't want to leave his wife bankrupt.
Yeah.
So Mark Twain says, "I'll help you publish your books," and by all accounts, so we have the original script where he wrote on. He wrote his book.
He wrote his book.
He wrote his book.
He wrote his book.
He wrote his own book.
That's impressive because
Yeah.
like apparently it's like one.
And
of
he was racing through time.
and I haven't read a single word of it.
Neither
but
have I.
apparently
It's one of the best
One of the
autobiographies
great
ever
works.
written. And what happens is, by the way, when it's getting sold, people are saying we have to do this for Grant. We have to do it for the general to make sure his wife doesn't end up bankrupt. So everyone buys a copy. In those days, buying books weren't a common thing.
Yeah.
And it broke all book records. And Mark Twain made a good fortune himself.
And did Grant get to see that? Or
He died before. I think he died as it was being published.
didn't he literally die
Weeks
after he
finished. Yeah.
Jesus, that's a cool way to go.
Yeah. But this is the thing. Let's end with how history is going to remember him. When he died, there was mourners all over the street. The North recognized he was this great son who won them the war, who protected African American rights, tried to help Native Americans, tried to advance So, Martin Luther King famously said that the moral arc of the universe is long,
Okay.
but it bends towards justice.
Oh, I've never heard that quote.
It's
That's
a great
beautiful.
quote. And in my opinion, Ulysses S Grant was one of the levers pushing it towards justice. And the South also admired Grant for being magnanimous, not brutalizing, not humiliating the South
Yeah.
for winning the war.
Not traveling to
And
the
he was
capital to celebrate.
And he let the Confederate soldiers keep their arms and their mules to return home. And contemporaneously, he was a beloved figure. But as the years went by, the Southern historians started pushing their agenda, and they started making him like a villain. Sure, he had corruption scandals in his administration, but he wasn't personally corrupt. His fault was too much loyalty, but sure, that's a legitimate criticism. But they overhyped that, and they diminished his accomplishments.
Forgot all the good things.
Yeah.
And also,
So even up till 2000, he's ranked in the 35th out of 44 in the presidential rankings.
do you reckon that'll go up now?
It's slowly going
Really?
up. Now it's in the 26th region, 24th
Really?
region, yeah.
It'll go much higher.
And
when
Ron
there's a play.
and when the movie when the movie comes out, it's going to get better.
I mean, he's probably the first person I've actually looked into and given a damn about his life. Such a cool guy. He came from
Literally nothing.
literally nothing. He bobbled around nothing, and he just got thrust into the heart of American history,
Yeah.
and actually had both hands firmly on the wheel,
So
steering it.
Ron Chernow said a very good thing. They said, "Why did you write about him?" He said he's the only figure at that era who was intrinsically involved during the Civil War. He was intrinsically involved in post-Lincoln's death and Reconstruction, and of course him as president. The concluding months of the concluding years of the Reconstruction, and he's the only figure who was actively involved throughout that decade.
That's kind of a crazy life.
Yeah.
I know I was researching, we were looking at stuff just so we could chat now.
Yeah.
Honestly, I want to go away and read more about him. I think he's awesome.
I have the entire audiobook if you want it.
I think I'll take it.
Yeah.
This has been fun.
This has been fun.
I've really enjoyed this.
Okay. By the way, to those
You
who...
can invite me back. I want to talk about more presidents and just stuff.
Oh, thank goodness! I was hoping that you'd get sick and tired of
No,
this.
this is awesome. I love it.
Okay. Well, let's end this episode at least.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nathan, for joining me,
Thank you for having me.
and thank you to anyone who's listening. And by the way, I'm sure we might have got a lot of things wrong. Do leave comments in the YouTube section. I'd be happy to learn from you guys.
Beautiful.
All right. Thanks,
Cheers,
guys.
guys. Thank you.
Yeah, and I hope we made history fun.
I'm having fun. I had fun.
I hope, history doesn't have to be facts. It's a story. It's a story of humanity, of humans. A story of the journey that humans have made.
I had a lot of fun and I want to learn more.
Okay. Well, the next episode we'll have to do another president who's been undermined by history, and we're going to try to redeem him.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Thanks again, guys, for joining us, and do join us in the next episode.